Preparatevi perché è un episodio un po' pesante, Benvenuti e benvenute in un nuovo episodio di Museum Education Podcast. L'unico podcast al mondo che parla esclusivamente di educazione museale. Allora, non dite che non vi avevo avvertito, perché la puntata di oggi potrebbe forse abbattere, le speranze di alcuni, ma no, non dobbiamo lasciarci abbattere, dobbiamo prendere ciò che è di positivo e dobbiamo trasformare quello che c'è di negativo in opportunità, in carburante per portare un cambiamento in questo settore, in questo mondo. Cosa facciamo oggi? Andiamo a parlare di lavoro, di contratti di lavoro nello specifico, ma in generale anche di lavoro nel settore dell'educazione museale a livello internazionale, con Wencke Maderbacher, coordinatrice del dipartimento CECA, ovvero il dipartimento che si occupa dell'educazione di ICOM internazionale della divisione europea, educatrice museale e coordinatrice di dipartimento educativo presso il museo dove lavora in Danimarca. Diamo il benvenuto quindi subito alla nostra ospite. Today we have here Wencke Maderbacher. You have to really excuse me for my pronunciation. You will say it much better, Wencke. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here today.
No. It's great for me to have you here today. And I just want to start really fast asking you who you are, where are you from, what you do. Tell us something about who is Wencke.
Okay, thank you very much, Alberto. Yes, it's pronounced Wencke Maderbacher. So I'm original from Vienna, Austria, where I lived just until 7 years ago. And I was a museum educator all my adult life, you can say, so for more than 20 years. I started as a freelancer at the Technical Museum in Vienna, where we had a really large team. But after several years, I grew to be the team leader there and also coordinator. And then several years ago, I changed because of love to Denmark. And now I'm the head of the Education and Cultural Interaction Department at MOesgaard Museum. That's close to Aarhus, the second largest city of Denmark. Yes, I think I will talk a little bit more about MOesgaard later, but on the other hand, from my educational background, I actually started with design, so furniture design, but then made a cultural management education and actually HR. I think that's also something that has really given an impression to me, because I was always curious about the working conditions and team leading and behind the scenes of a museum, how it's working and how you coordinate these things. And in ICOM CECA, the International Council of Museums, the CECA group, the Committee of Education and Cultural Action, I'm currently the European coordinator, and I have a special interest group where you are also part of, the special interest group for professional development of museum educators. And that's really the focus topics. I think these professionalization behind the scenes, getting better working conditions, and also all the interaction between the audience and us, the museum educators, and also putting this on a professional
Well, we'll talk
level.
about this also in this episode, because it is a very interesting
Yes.
topic that a lot of people usually search on, because it's like that you never talk enough about this topic, because we are still in a very peculiar state of play in this field. We still, it's like that you can never completely get out. But
Yes.
before diving inside all the main topic that I will ask you today, and then we'll talk about it, I have to ask you the question that I do to everyone that pass here in this podcast, and it is what actually is and what actually means museum education for you, because we see that it changes for people, places, and everything. So, what is for you museum education?
Yes, for me personally, museum education is on the interaction and the space between the participants and the museum. So the space and the time we shape as museum educators. So we together, the participants, and we as museum educators approach the topics and themes of the institution of the museum, and the mediation is happening right now in this interaction. So you cannot predict the tour, you cannot predict the happening, as you can say. So to shape and to be very professional while doing so, because of the other hand, you have to know what, also anticipate what could maybe happen in this time, and what do I want, where do I want to go with the group. But on the other side, there's always this unforeseeness. So you don't know what is really going to happen, what are they going to answer, and in which direction is this tour going to happen. So I really think that you are talking about topics in a museum with your participants, and inspiring them to new thoughts and to new insights about themselves and about the topics. And you also hopefully get a lot of new insights with each group. So that's really interesting.
Well, I'm absolutely with you on this. For example, I remember one time in a museum, someone asked me to explain every little thing of the collection, and of course I was like, I make something a little bit different, and the answer, it was like, well, if you don't explain everything, so everyone can do it. And then, I mean, the thing that you said, it's exactly why not everyone can do it, because it's not that easy to adjust your way to approach people, and then to mediate and to put in relation things, spaces, person, people. I mean, it's a very complex thing that we actually do inside a room with the people. So I always think that we are like on a very low scale of priorities for museum and for cultural institution. And I mean, it's not like this in every places. Of course, there are a lot of exceptions. I mean, I have to say, with fortune, I mean, at least. But I wanted to ask you why, in your opinion, even though museums always talk about how important education inside their institution is, we are still in a place where most of the museums, most of the cultural institutions put us in a very low scale, and we're like the last thing that they think about, even though they talk about us as first thing to think.
Yes, I'm totally with you. Luckily, there are some exceptions. I also knew just from a few. Luckily, I work at the museum where we are really very much in the decision making and be included in involved in the development of the program. But nearly all the museums I collaborate with, or I'm, like we heard in our special interest group. So this part of collaboration, and also the involvement of the museum educational department at its all, that's really a problem that's really struggling. I think when I just hear in fall 2023 here, I made some interviews with colleagues one-on-one from around Europe, and actually what I really found out, what was the worst condition is when the museum educators team is not even included in the museum. When it's an agency where they are hired hour by hour from this agency, and then they have no connect to anybody who can make a decision in the museum. So that's really the worst situation, and it was also a very bad situation to start from in the Corona lockdowns, in the COVID-19 lockdowns, because then they had no connection, nobody to talk to, nobody to get in touch with when the museums were closed. It was just like, okay, a link that was missing. And also with development, so that's really something, a development, and unfortunate in some countries, some cities, these agencies have been there all the time. People have not thought about it differently, but I have to think it the other way around, because now you can also not say that museum education, okay, it's maybe the youngest profession in the museum's history, but on the other hand, the CECA committee was there also like just a few years after the founding of ICOM, and it's one of the largest committees of all, and it's very, very important. And nearly every museum and all the bigger museums have a stable program. You know, they are not just, it's not just happening a tour here and there. It's a part of the program. They have it on their homepage. They have it at their program, at the annual program. So it's not something that is just by exception happening here and there and everything. And so I have to really to say it also from the totally management point. So that is something you can plan ahead, and you can plan the resources, and you can plan the people as your staff and everything. So that's, and the most museums have also a quantity where it's happening all the time. So I really think it's maybe because out of this habit, like, oh, we've always have done it like this, and not rethinking how it would actually have been better. These many years ago, it now has changed again. But when I was working at the technical museums so I have worked there from 2001 to 2015, but around 2010, we have changed all the contracts from freelance to permanent contracts. And that was really the best shift I could make. And since then, I'm really fighting so much for proper conditions and proper contracts, because suddenly also as a team leader and as a department leader, you don't have to bury all the weight on your own shoulders. You have a lot of colleagues then, and you can develop together, and you can also coordinate together. You don't have to do everything your own, and you can be so much more creative. And on the other hand, we have had also, because just on the conference I have been 2-3 weeks ago in the beginning of October, it was again this argument, oh, but the seasonal, the seasons are swinging so much, it's so difficult to hire people stable when you have swinging seasons. But you can do something in the off seasons. You can make trainings, you can develop programs, you can make evaluations, you can do school projects where your museum does not have to be open. You can invent some totally new programs like we did at that time. So that's really something totally crazy. And now also at MOesgaard Museum, where I'm working now, it was also my first thing to get better and more stable contracts there for everybody. So also to get the people to also to identify with their work, because that's difficult when you are just hired hour by hour from each museum, and you're also just maybe, that was also how I started at the Museum Educator, when you are just paid the time in front of the audience. Everything before and after was on your own excuse. So that was really harsh, because what if the group is a no-show, or you get sick, or I don't know what, there's so many reasons why you suddenly don't get money. So that's really horrible.
That's really an important thing that you just said, and I was about to ask you something, but you just triggered me something else. So, for example, the low season for us, I think it should be very important because, for example, this summer I spent 2 months developing with my association for museum activity program and educational the communication program. I mean, all the things that you usually have to do, but still there were 2 months also because when you want to create something new, maybe even if it's just an activity, you have to develop it, then you have to design, you have to test it, and then you have to change it, and then you go test it again, and so on. And that's just for a simple activity. So you can imagine for an entire program, and usually people is like that, they don't understand this. So it's like, okay, you just take this and go. I wish it could be so easy. It would be so much better for us. And yes, because January and February are usually months where it's really hard to work with people, and I can understand this, but still there are good starting point to start working with intern people and not maybe with the outside people if they are so low in number. You were talking also about the conference, and I wanted to ask you also something more about this conference. What was it about? But I also wanted to ask you about, because you say that one important thing that we usually start to work with the pay that is by hour. So, for example, here in Italy, but in Naples also, we have a very drastic problem that people usually have, like €4.5 to €6 medium pay per hour, which is I mean, okay, in Italy we have a different lifestyle, we have a different cost, but still it's like it's impossible to live with something like this. And also I also saw a lot of protests that is going on around the world. For example, at the Guggenheim, New York. We also had one, but it never happened here in the Uffizi because the government granted what they asked before the protest at Uffizi. I don't think that this was a very good, because I mean, okay, they gave you what you asked, but you still have a lot of things for protests. So I mean, it was a missing opportunity, I think. But still, we have those problems all around the world, and still we are trying to work against those problems. And I just wanted to ask you, I mean, why for you we are in this condition, and maybe if whenever we are going to face contract, if there is something else that maybe we have to have a specific eye to pay attention where we have contract. I mean, for example, when you work, I don't know how do you call it, but the partita IVA, it's called here in Italy, where you pay the taxes as a freelance. There is a lot of things, because, for example, museums here, there are a lot of them that call people, but they have to work as a freelance. So usually it's not like that you work for the museum, you are still working for yourself. So there are two questions.
Yes.
You choose one,
okay.
the one that you want to answer before.
Yeah, I would start with the contract situation, but also because that's actually, I learned as well that it's quite difficult to answer this, because it's quite different from country to country and sometimes from region to region. And then very often you are not in a position to choose, do I get hired as a freelancer or do I get hired as in a permanent contract? So that's often not in the position of the person who is applying for a job, unfortunately. So, but I want to come back to this, because something is happening. But what to look out for? I would always look out for, you know, a clear frame, and also to, for example, if it's a freelance contract, to ask or to emphasize that also the preparation time is covered, that the meeting time is covered, that the learning time is covered, that there is an overhead for organization. Maybe sometimes in some freelance contracts you can get this, that there is a realistic time for developing of new concepts. We both know that it's impossible to write a new concept, a good concept, really in 20 hours or something, what you sometimes get from the museum. So that's nearly impossible. So so that would be something to check. And also I have, that was my dog, if you have heard this. Also to check, for example, I really think it makes a strange, I would say, a strange taste in the mouth when the hours are differently paid, you know. Why is it often less paid to work with a children's group than with an adult group, or talking in a different language, or I don't know what. I really think you always have to prepare. You always have to be at your best with each group, and also a group of students can really take a lot of your preparation and engagement, whereas maybe I would actually say adults are maybe the easiest to get through an exhibition, because a lot of adults have already been numb and are not interacting. And so yeah, that would be something in a freelance contract. In a permanent contract, in a stable contract, I would always, and also with the freelance, I would make a research on what other people are earning, and also it is an academic job, so asking for the same level as the curators and others who are making program at the museum are earning. So that you are on the same level. And also in a permanent contract, I know this is also difficult from country to country and from contract to contract, but ask at least when you can, as what are the terms for a pay raise? So when can you expect a pay raise? Is it something which is happening biannually, or you don't know? What are the conditions? Just so you know, and because when you first have the contract, nobody will ever mention pay raise again. So you have to discuss this before you have your contract. So that's something I would research, and as well something like off time, and also with the permanent contract as well with the freelance. Because you know, we in museum education, we work very crazy hours. What's about the evening and the weekends and the holidays and the special occasions? How is this covered, or how is it to have time off again? Do I get an extra payment? Whatever. So these are things and conditions I would to look out to, and always contact the local museum education association. I know you have also a really well functioning one in Italy, to hear and ask what are the conditions, what can I expect, how can I make really good arguments. And what I can see, and I think that's something where we, as I'm such a in-between generation X and millennial, and I really think I can learn something from the younger generation, that they are actually better in argumenting for their work-life balance and for good jobs, because we can really see at the really young ones that if the working conditions are not fitting, they are actually leaving. They are saying, I'm not working under these conditions, I'm going. So that's really something surprising, and I think in my generation, and also these just so 10 years younger than me, I have not seen this. But these now 15, 20 years younger, just entering the job market, they are really, if they are not satisfied with the conditions, and they really have a different work-life balance. So that's interesting. I think that's something the whole job market is going to be changed by this position. So that's quite interesting. But that was on payment and contracts what I would pay attention for.
Well, I hope that in Italy we will arrive to that point at one time, because I mean we are really far away from this point, because usually
yes,
for example, here in Italy, if they try to offer you a job which is underpaid and everything, they will get someone. I mean, if I will say no to that, they will say, don't worry, no problem, I will find another one the other day. So, and the problem is that, I mean, this kind of problem, I think they start because we don't talk enough about this problematic, and they think that people think that this is normal. So you cannot change it, and also you cannot change it by refuse that offer. But I think that at one point, at one time, we have to start this, because I can understand that a lot of people have economic difficult and everything, but especially if you are in economic difficult, if you accept something that it's already so terrible, you will still be in economic difficult. So you have more reason to anyone else to don't accept stuff like this. Also, I find it very interesting that you suggested to see if maybe I have to work in a specific day, maybe in the weekend, maybe on the festivity, holiday. Sorry. Because it's also very funny how museum treat us in Italy, because usually in a holiday and in the most important festivity that we have here, you have to work. The museum had to be open. I mean, we are also open on Christmas all day long, for example, and we had like a few museums that tried to close on a specific holiday, and I mean the government also told them something which was not very nice, because for example, I don't remember when, but the Uffizi asked to close in a day, and the government was furious because they lost money and stuff like this, which I think it's a horrible thing to think about. And so I really hope we can get to that point.
Like I said, it's really different from country to country, the conditions and also where you start from. But this, I always say it, that if you're working in museum education, you are really working at these times where everybody else has a free time. You're working at Easter, you're working at Christmas, you're working the weekends before Christmas, you are working all the holidays. There's always some special programs, extra hands are needed. And so you really have to make your own holidays and your own time off season. So that is the condition. And as well, working so many weekends during the year. So because I have to say, we have to be there when the guests are there, when the participants are there. I also think that's really okay. But on the other hand, normally in the service section, like the gastronomy, other nurses, the hospital, I don't know, you get extra payment for working on the weekends, working in the nights, working in the evenings, on the holidays. And I also think, why should cultural co-workers not get extra payment for working on special occasions? We also have family we are not seeing at Easter, on the weekend, on the evening. I don't know.
Exactly.
When. So
yeah, I think the problem is that we treat it like it's a normal working day. That is the problem, because of course the museum is a service that serve people, so it's okay to be open in days like this. But I mean, for example, I know people, I literally know people that misses the Christmas for years now because they had to work on on every Christmas. So especially in museum where they have not so many people as a personal, so it's always to treat people like, okay, it's a holiday, it's not a normal, it's not something normal, it's out of the normal. So maybe there is a different pay, maybe there is a different way to think about it, but yeah. Aside from that, which I'm sorry, because talking to you about this kind of stuff, for me it's also like getting out so much thing that I have inside, so it's normal for me to divagate to a lot of things. No, I wanted to ask you, because the second question was if you want to talk about the comfort that you was in a few weeks ago. Maybe tell us something, because I'm also very curious. As I always say, the podcast, it's an excuse for me to talk with people. So the next step is to share with the other one on the internet.
But it was the Austrian ICOM CECA conference. And it was very interesting because it was about the working conditions of museum educators. And of course it was concentrating on how the conditions are in Austria. But I was presenting a little interview questionnaire I was having with some European colleagues. So I gave the European perspective into this, and our colleague Raffaela Ricci, she was talking about the museum education situation from France. And what was very interesting, besides my little study, was actually that they made a little survey, actually a quite good survey, about 180 people have answered their survey. It was a little bit like your survey you did in Italy just 2022, I think. And they were asking several things. I think maybe the same as you. You can guess from in percentage from the people who have answered, how many of those were women or male or not to identify. How many do you think were from one, or maybe just in percentage? What do you guess in Austria?
Well, I mean, based on what we have here in Italy, I would say at least 80% woman.
Nearly. You're not that far away, but actually it was just 74.6. So nearly 75%, 3/4. So really a lot. So that is not surprising. Actually, I was surprised that it was also just 75%, because when I'm looking at I think at the conference hall, there was maybe also 5 male colleagues. And yes, the age. And then, of course, you could also guess that there are enormously, nearly all of them had a university degree. But we also know this from all our other studies, that museum educators are very high educated. A lot of them have several studies and speak several languages. So that was interesting. What was actually quite interesting was that nearly half of the participants of this survey in Austria has answered that they have more than one workplace, so to cover their expenses. So they have up to 6 or 8 museums they are working for. And we are not talking about collaborating museums, where it's maybe one umbrella organization, and then, because that's just one. But also, I also think it's widely that nearly half of the museum educators have 2 jobs, also 2 more museums they are working from. And not even half of the museum educators have a permanent contract, so it's a lot of everything else. What is also interesting was that, that it's that the most of them can just say, yes, I can pay something. So I have to live with somebody else to make a living. I cannot. I don't earn enough money to live on my own, totally free, or with the money I have. So that's actually devastating to see that there is so many that actually, okay, yeah, you earn money, but without a partner, without a family, without somebody you are sharing a flat or something like this, you could actually not earn enough for making a living. And we just have to recognize, okay, we have highly academic people, long trained, everybody adults, not students anymore. So that is really something. And most of them would actually like to work more, get better payment, and yeah. So even in Austria, also that is something. At least we have some other better conditions where I know it was just 10 years ago a totally different picture. So around 70% say I have a working place at the museum, so I have a computer, I have a desk, so that is good. And also that the preparation time is time of the paid work time. So that's also 75%. So that's really something which is really, really good. And also that nearly all of them, 96%, have the opinion that museum education is the job. As they are not just having this as an in-between job for being something else, because no, they want to stay in museums education. So that was actually the answer from nearly all of them. But there is also some singular, quotes, like, and I think you can notice as well in Italy. I'm working now for more than 10 years in museum education, and I still don't have the social security payments covered. So that is really when you are working in Austria, it's around, I think, 360 euros a month if you're not earning this. So you're always under this. And that you also have to maybe sell the tickets beside of being a museum educator. And that also you are not collecting times for your pension at last. So that is also something where we really have to watch out, that this is really, really, really precarious when we have working conditions where it's also not just your situation right now is unstable, where you're also risking your pension, your future, maybe what is happening if you're just getting seriously ill and you have to cover your security, your insurance bills and things like this. So that's really something, or we can all see it when Corona hits and people lost their jobs. So that's where you could really see that the system is not working, where it's crashing. When everything's working, when you can just get along from one good paying month to another, and then there comes another good season and you can just get along, then you are not so concentrated on the misfunction. But as there's not so much that should go wrong, that museums educators, a lot of museum educators really are in financial trouble, in social security troubles, and that's just not fair, because we are making a great participant of the museum. We are developing all the activities with the audience, so that should be seen and heard and also valued in stable situations and resources and frames for museum educators. And I could see you were just nodding your head.
Well, I really wanted to say something like, that's so fascinating, or saying something like, wow, beautiful, but I mean, it became a bit of an horror episode, because I mean, it's like see in the future and not seeing so much bright. So at this time of the episode, I usually ask for the guest to give some tips about what we can do for getting in this field, in this study path. But maybe I can ask you a different question. Maybe I can ask you to give us some tips to just not give up, especially after all that you just said to us, because it was really, 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 really hard. Also because a lot of things that in Austria right now seems so good, in Italy seems so bad, but very bad. So maybe something. I mean, I really wanted to change something here. Okay, that's also one of the main reason the why on Instagram and on with the podcast I tend to talk about this kind of stuff, but it seems like it's really impossible sometimes, really impossible. So I don't want to turn this episode in.
Now, yeah, I can totally understand you, and I can also totally feel the frustration. Also, when I made these European interviews with colleagues spread around Europe, I also a colleague from Portugal. She was also saying, she thinks she's repeating herself, and now after more than 10 years, she really wants to see something, an output, something, a way where we are going. And on the other hand, I really can say, if I'm now in 22 years in museum education, then I really could see there are more stable contracts than ever before, and also the involvement of museum education is better than ever before. And I can also see it in a lot of, fundings, for example, for research. Now museum education is a must in these applications. The researchers have to have in their research application, how is this going to be transported, shared with the audience, with the society, with the people. And they come to museum educators and say, please be a part of my project, and I'm going to pay some hours, and I really think we should be more, also our self-awareness should be more proud in cases like this, that we really say, without, if these research studies are not going to be shared, if they are not proper shared with the society, with the locals, then they are not worth anything. So that's actually something where we could see it. And I also think we could see it in a lot of political and reports and stats. So there is happening something, but yeah, we and I think to unionize or to get together in associations and put it, or in like international, like ICOM CECA, it's better. We also just discussed this at the conference a few weeks ago, because it's sometimes very difficult to, especially if you maybe have quite difficult working conditions at your museum, how should you speak up? Because you are still at this museum. But then an organization like ICOM CECA or the Museums Association or the Museum Educators Association, they can lift the topic and can act as a body instead of standing alone and fighting alone. So that's really a help. And especially I really think that such studies and surveys and research on the topic can help to shape an awareness, because it can refrain from, I have a feeling that it's unfair, or that it's underpaid, or that I have an unstable contract, to showing, okay, here in this region. What also was quite interesting, when I made my interviews, some colleagues from Belgium and also actually from Portugal, were talking about that it's a quite unfair difference in payment if you are from one museum to another. So why are you getting maybe a high payment in this museum and a low payment in another museum? And also regions or countryside and city, but actually we all know the costs of living are not that different, not by more than double the price or the wage. So that's quite crazy. And that's something where we can say, okay, you can just find out about this with an organization if you are looking above your own institute and your own workplace. You have to get it up to a survey, and of course a national survey, but also maybe best an international survey to get focus on the topic.
Well, Wencke, you restored a bit of hope, I have to say, but
Yes.
I would like to.
So I think that's something that's quite important. And
No, I would just want to like to to end the episode with okay, let's just not give especially tips about books on anything, but you said, for example, studies. If there are any studies that maybe do you think that we should know about our working condition that can help us to grow our knowledge about what we actually do in our working condition. Even if you want to share with me something later, I will put everything in the link description of this episode, because I think that it could be more important for an episode like this to talk specifically about the working condition, because usually I ask.
I actually always think, and we can really, all of us, be better in this. I always try to do it myself as well. We need to get better about writing and publication about our work, because and proper publication, writing about how we are doing things and why we are doing things and what were our research and motives behind this. So publish, don't perish, because especially museum education is something that vanishes so fast. We are always making new programs, and our work is often disappearing quite fast. So I really think we should put some effort in properly documenting our work to show all the insights and all our work and studies and evaluation about this. I would really, this is an appeal to everybody, and I also myself really try to get better at this. And I can actually recommend something from the conference where I was just right now, the Kunsthaus in Graz. In Graz, the second biggest city of Austria, their Kunsthaus is called Living Alien, and they just made a publication about 20 years of museum education. And this is such a nice and good documentation of museum education work. I will send to you the right. It's just out because it's a good aspect on all the different kind of being a museum educator, and it's funny, and it has, but of course also numbers and history and ideas, and also, for example, they named all the colleagues who worked with them in the 20 years, all the museum educators. So, and making portraits and about why they made this and this programs, and also have a job description and everything in it. So I really, that's a good publication about museum education. It's called Living Alien 20, in German, 20 Jahre Kunstvermittlung Kunsthaus Graz, also 20 years of art education at Kunsthaus Graz. So that's really a very good publication on the work of museum education. And Yeah, I really think that's, and actually I really have to make a little advertisement for our own group, joining one of the CECA 6 special interest groups, because like ours, professional development, or there's one on digital learning for young members, people who are just starting on evaluation, on everything. There's really these special interest groups, and especially what I like about this, because I know it's so difficult to travel and to come to the annual conferences. It's very expensive, but these special interest groups, they meet on a monthly or regular basis, and you have an international exchange with colleagues on topics that are really interesting. So I can really just recommend this, and you can make a presentation, you can get your own project, so you can present your own project in there and get some feedback or inspiration for research and projects. So I can really, I think that's a really good thing. We have started there at ICOM CECA 3 years ago. So that's really a good thing to get engaged with other colleagues, and also get engaged with your local museum education association. That really helps that you don't feel like you're alone fighting for better conditions. So yeah.
Well, I think it's one of the main topic that it should be. So Wencke, really thank you. I will put everything in the description of this episode, and I think that will be so much helpful to anyone that is gonna listen to this episode, because it was a very strong episode. But I think that it is important that episodes like those are the core of attention sometimes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alberto, for having me. And if there is some museum leadership hearing us, you can just profit from engaging and involving the museum education department. I have not seen a museum where it went wrong, because also the museum flourishes in having some creative and engaging program with the audience. That is what we all want to. So that's really great it can just get better to involve museum educators. Thank you so much for this interesting talk. We could talk for hours on this topic, so I just feel like we could talk much more on that.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. But really, thank you, Wencke.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bene, per questo episodio è tutto. È stato abbastanza difficile come episodio oggi, devo ammetterlo, ma lo abbiamo portato a casa e abbiamo portato a noi anche una riflessione molto importante, che spero possa essere d'aiuto per molte persone. Spero che possa trasformarsi in qualcosa che vada oltre le parole, quindi in qualcosa che possa poi effettivamente essere messo in pratica nel quotidiano, anche da istituzioni museali che magari ci ascoltano. Come sempre vi ricordo che trovate tutti quanti i link nella descrizione dell'episodio, e vi ricordo anche che il podcast è un progetto totalmente autoprodotto, quindi mi raccomando, supportate, perché si mantiene, insomma, grazie al vostro supporto di ascoltatori e ascoltatrici. Seguitemi su Instagram, trovate sempre il link in descrizione. Unitevi anche al gruppo Telegram, dove io di tanto in tanto segnalo bandi, news, insomma cose interessanti che possono interessare a chi si sta inalberando in questo percorso. Trovate inoltre nei link in descrizione la mia wishlist Amazon, la wishlist dell'educatore museale medio, insomma quella con tantissime cose interessanti, fra cui giochi e libri, insomma magari può essere utile anche a qualcuno di voi. E vi segnalo anche che nello scorso episodio del podcast ho iniziato a presentare questo progetto cartaceo, quindi delle carte per sviluppare, per progettare nell'ambito didattico. Vi lascio in descrizione un link ad un form Google per potermi aiutare a comprendere come anche poterlo veicolare e farlo arrivare anche a voi. Presto ci saranno poi notizie molto più approfondite. Bene, per questa domenica davvero è tutto. Noi ci vediamo domenica prossima, come sempre, alle 12, con un episodio un po' diverso dal solito, ma non vi spoilerò ancora niente. Io di nuovo vi auguro buona domenica e alla prossima. Ciao!